Have you ever stopped to think about the true value of a gift? Sometimes what we leave behind can be more impactful than anything we can give. On a cold and lonely Christmas Eve, I found myself faced with a decision that would change everything. It was just another night when I, a millionaire with a heart hardened by success and pressure, fired my cleaning lady, a simple woman named Maria, who always brought a glimmer of hope to my home. But what I didn't know was that the gift she would leave behind would leave all my plans in tatters. It was a typical Christmas night, with the city lit up and full of life. The twinkling lights in the trees, the smell of pine in the air, and the children's laughter echoing through the streets. But inside my house, the atmosphere was completely different. Loneliness enveloped me like a heavy blanket. I had built a successful life, but the truth was I was isolated, surrounded by wealth but without connection. The walls of my palace were cold, and I constantly wondered if all my effort was worth it. That night, I was about to make a decision that would affect not only my life, but Maria's as well. Mary was a woman with an indomitable spirit. She had worked for me for years, always with a smile on her face, even when things were difficult. I saw her as just an employee, but somehow she always managed to remind me of what I had missed along the way, the simplicity, kindness, and true meaning of Christmas. As I thought about firing her, a wave of guilt washed over me. I knew she was counting on the job, but the pressure to keep up my appearance and image of success weighed on me like an anchor. That night, as my mind wrestled with the decision I was about to make, I looked out the window and saw a family gathering to celebrate. The laughter and human warmth that emanated from that scene made me reflect on the life I had chosen. I remembered my childhood dream of being someone who makes a difference in the lives of others. But as I climbed the ladder of success, it seemed like I had lost sight of that vision. What did I really value? Money or human connection? When Maria arrived, I realized that what I really wanted was the freedom to be myself, without the expectations that the world placed on me. I wanted to help people, and at that moment I realized that firing her was not the answer. Instead, I needed to find a way to give back, to recognize his worth. Life has taught me that the most valuable things cannot be bought, and I was about to discover that the best gift I could give would be a gesture of gratitude. As we talked, I looked her in the eye and realized that she was not just a cleaning lady, but a friend who had shown me the importance of empathy. What I didn't know was that, even after being fired, the gift that Maria would leave me would change the way I saw the world. What could be a simple act of dismissal would become a powerful lesson about love, generosity, and the true spirit of Christmas. The story that would unfold from there would take me on a journey of self-discovery, in which I would have to confront my own fears and insecurities. Along this journey, I would meet unexpected people who would help me rediscover my purpose, and the connection I had always thought would become the key to my happiness. The gift that Maria left behind, something I never imagined would make such a difference, would show me that true wealth comes from the generosity and love we share with others. What I didn't know as I prepared to fire Maria that Christmas Eve was that her gift would change not just my life, but the lives of everyone around me. And so, a simple decision would become the beginning of a new journey where I would learn the truth about what really matters. As Maria began to clean the living room, I felt torn. The decision to fire her weighed on my mind like a stone. Her every movement reminded me of what I was about to do, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was making a huge mistake. She always had a way of transforming the environment. Even in the middle of work, his laugh infected the space. And at that moment, I was sure that by firing her, I was not only taking away her livelihood, but also turning off a light that illuminated my life. "Are you okay, sir?" Maria asked with a worried look while I watched her in silence. I could see the little wrinkles on his face, marks of a life of hard work. The sincerity in his voice hit me like a punch in the gut. "Yes, I am, Maria." Just thinking, I replied, trying to hide the storm of feelings inside me. She smiled warmly, but there was a sadness in her eyes that made me uneasy. Maria was always the first to arrive and the last to leave. Her dedication was admirable, and I knew she wasn't just fulfilling a duty. She cared about the space she cared for. Over the years, it had become part of my routine, and now I was about to undo it all. My phone vibrated on the table, interrupting my thoughts. It was a message from one of my partners asking about a new project we were developing. His words were all about numbers and profits. The more I read, the more I felt suffocated. What did I really want? A project that would increase my wealth or something that would make a difference in people's lives? The answer seemed to escape me. Sir, Maria began, hesitantly. I knew she was getting ready to tell me something important, something that could change the course of this conversation. But before she could finish, I interrupted her. Maria, the voice failed me. I didn't know how to explain what was happening inside me. The guilt and fear of losing control of my life were overwhelming. I understand that things are difficult, sir, but please think carefully. I need this job. The sincerity in his voice was palpable, and for an instant, I saw myself reflected in her, a person trying to find her place in a world that often doesn't listen to the humblest. I felt a wave of empathy. How had I become so blind to the needs of others? All my success seemed so insignificant when compared to the despair in Maria's eyes. The weight of responsibility on my shoulders increased. I didn't want to be seen as just a millionaire who fired his cleaning lady on Christmas Eve. I wanted to be someone who helped, who made a difference. Maria, I started to speak again, but the uncertainty paralyzed me. I felt like I was at a crossroads. The decision I made now could define who I would be in the future. Sir, I know you have many worries, but please don't forget what really matters. Sometimes, the simplest things can bring more happiness than any wealth, she said, with a deep look that seemed to penetrate my soul. Those words echoed in my mind. I remembered Christmas when I was a child, when happiness was in the little things, in laughter, in hugs, and in the simplicity of being with those we love. What had happened to that dreamy boy? I had let myself be led down the path of success and lost sight of what really mattered. I decided I couldn't go through with the plan to fire her. But how could I express this to her? The idea that instead of firing her, I could help her began to take shape in my mind. What if I offered her a raise, or even the opportunity to work on a project she could call her own? The truth is, I didn't know how to give a gift that was truly meaningful. Maria, I started again, but before I could continue, the phone vibrated once again. It was a reminder of the business meeting I had later. The pressure on me increased, and doubt returned to torment me. How could I balance my professional life and wanting to be a better person? Sir, I don't want to disturb your plans. If you need to do this, I understand. The look of resignation on his face broke my heart. I felt like a villain in a story. No, Maria. I can't do this. The words came out of me with more force than I expected. I can't just fire you without thinking about the consequences. I want to find a way to help you. She looked at me with surprise, and I saw a spark of hope in her eyes. Would you really do that? Yes, I want to give back in some way. What I said sounded like a commitment, and the idea that I could help someone started to warm my heart. But even as I spoke, doubt still hovered over me. I knew that this was just a first step, and that many challenges were yet to come. The fear of not being able to change, of failing again, was a shadow that never left me. And as I looked at Maria, I realized that my journey was just beginning. That I would have to face not only the pressures of the business world, but also the ghosts of my past, the beliefs that imprisoned me. The truth was, even in that moment of revelation, I was just beginning to understand what it meant to be truly generous. The internal struggle unfolding inside me would be more complicated than I imagined. And as Maria smiled at me, I knew I would have to fight not just for her, but for myself and the life I truly wanted to live. As Maria looked at me with a mixture of hope and disbelief, I felt a whirlwind of emotions within me. The idea of helping her seemed like the right thing to do, but there was a weight on my back that wouldn't let me rest. I needed to face the reality of my professional world, and it made me uneasy. So, do you really want to help me? Maria asked, her voice shaking slightly. I could see the vulnerability in his gaze. What I was about to do could change not only her life, but mine as well. What I had promised was not simple help. It was a commitment I wasn't sure I would be able to keep. Yes, I want to. Let's talk about it, I replied, trying to convey confidence, even though the doubt was still alive inside me. But as we began to discuss a possible raise and some ideas for a project she could lead, pressure from the outside world began to seep into our conversation. The phone vibrated again, and I couldn't help but look at the screen. It was a message from one of my partners, demanding updates on that project that was consuming me. Sorry, I mumbled, not knowing whether I should continue the conversation or answer the work call. Maria's gaze dimmed a little, and I realized that every shift in my attention was a reminder of how insecure she felt. How could I give you hope when I was so lost myself? Don't worry, sir. I understand you have responsibilities, she said, but there was a hint of sadness in her voice. Those words hit me like a punch. It was as if she was telling me that I wasn't capable of delivering what I promised, and in a way, she was right. Deep down, I knew that the pressure of my work, the expectations of my partners, and the incessant search for profits were taking me away from what really mattered. I fought this internal battle every day. As Maria talked about her ideas, I was lost in thought. The image of her, working diligently, was becoming a symbol of what I had neglected. What I really wanted was to help, but the weight of my obligations left me paralyzed. Sir, Maria began again, but her hesitation made me realize that she was as insecure as I was. The silence that followed was oppressive. I could feel the tension in the air, like something was about to explode. Maria, I called, my voice steady. I really want to do this, but I need to understand how I can help. What do you need from me? She hesitated before answering, and I saw a shadow of fear cross her face. I don't want to be a burden. Things are difficult, and I don't want to be the reason you worry. Those words hit me like lightning. I didn't know that by trying to help, I was driving a wedge between us. What I thought was a kind gesture was turning into added pressure. I needed to be more than just someone who offered help. I needed to be a friend. It was then that the idea of actually making a change began to blossom in my mind. What if I not only offered Maria a raise, but also invited her to participate in a project that could benefit others? Something that made her feel valued and part of something bigger. But how could I bring this up to her without it seeming like I was just trying to alleviate my own guilt? Maria, I began again, this time more determined. I want you to know that your job is much more than just keeping the house clean. You bring joy and life to this place. And I would like to work with you on something bigger. She looked at me, confusion mixed with hope in her eyes. What do you have in mind? A community project. Something that helps people like us. I want you to lead this. You have a unique vision, and I would like to learn from you. Her expression changed instantly. Insecurity gave way to a spark of enthusiasm. Are you serious? I don't know if I'm capable. You are more than capable, Maria. What I said was the truth. I saw a strength in her that I hadn't recognized myself. But at the same time, the pressure of work and the expectations of my partners still hung over me. The idea of distancing myself from what they considered success made me anxious. Sir, you don't have to do this. You have your own life, your own business. The sincerity in his voice made me question my intentions. Was I really willing to go out of my way to help her? The dilemma began to consume my mind. What did it mean to be successful? Was it having money, or was it making a difference in people's lives? The weight of this decision was crushing. As I struggled internally, Maria looked at me, waiting for an answer. The responsibility of his expectations weighed heavily on me. And at the same time, I remembered how I always put success above personal relationships. The idea of a community project seemed increasingly difficult to achieve. How could I commit to something that demanded so much of me when my life was so busy? Doubt was like a shadow, following me and reminding me that I could fail again. I don't know if I can do this, Maria. The words came out of me like a whisper. I have so much to lose. What if you gain something much more valuable? She replied, with a sparkle in her eyes. Sometimes you have to take risks to find what really matters. Those words echoed in my mind. What did I really have to lose? What was more important? What others thought of me, or the chance to be someone who made a difference? The battle inside me was intensifying. The pressure to be a successful millionaire was suffocating me, and as a result, I was losing sight of what really mattered. And as I looked at Maria, I realized I was about to make a choice that could change the course of my life. The journey of personal overcoming would not be easy, but I knew I needed to face my fears and doubts, not only to help Maria, but to find myself again. That conversation was just the beginning. The decision I made now would not only affect Maria's future, but mine as well. And as the tension hung in the air, I realized that I would need to confront not only the world's expectations, but also my own ghosts. The real fight was just beginning. As silence settled between us, I felt my heart speed up. The intensity of the moment was palpable, and the weight of my doubts seemed to grow by the second. Maria stood in front of me, her eyes fixed on mine, and what I was about to decide could not only change the course of her life, but mine as well. The word success echoed in my mind, but what did it really mean? What I had achieved so far seemed so empty compared to the possibility of doing something that really mattered. "You know, Maria," I began, my voice shaking a little. "I always thought that being successful meant making money, being respected. But lately, I've been wondering if that's all." She tilted her head, listening intently. I saw her as an ally, but at the same time, the feeling that I was putting her in a vulnerable position made me uneasy. I didn't want to be the reason for his insecurity. The internal struggle intensified as memories of my past mistakes began to resurface. How much had I left aside in the name of ambition? How many times had I ignored the people who really mattered in my life? "This isn't easy for me to deal with," I confessed, my voice breaking. "I've always focused on being the best at work, on earning respect. But at the same time, I feel like I've lost connection with what really matters." Maria seemed to understand, and for a brief moment, she became a reflection of my own struggle. Her vulnerability made me realize we weren't so different. We were both trying to find our place in a world that often felt hostile and uncaring. Her struggle to assert herself and my battle against expectations were facets of the same pain. "I'm afraid too," she said, the sincerity in her words cutting through the air. Fear of failing, of not being enough. Those words resonated deeply with me. I was scared too. Fear that this new journey wouldn't work, fear of disappointing Maria and myself. And at that moment, I realized that what was stopping me from moving forward was not just the weight of obligations, but the burden of my insecurities. I needed to confront this. "But perhaps failure is not the end," I continued, feeling a new determination grow within me. "Maybe failure is just part of learning." Maria looked at me with a mixture of doubt and hope, and I knew it needed to be more than just empty words. I needed to act. What if I looked at our situation not as a burden, but as an opportunity for growth? The idea of a community project began to seem like more than an idea. It was a chance to build something with meaning, to recover the essence that I had lost. "Let's do this together," I said, my voice now firmer. "Let's create something that not only changes your life, but also impacts the lives of other people. I want you to lead this, and I will be by your side, learning from you." As I spoke, a wave of relief and freedom began to wash over me. The weight of my obligations was still there, but somehow it didn't seem as oppressive. What I was about to embark on wasn't just about helping Maria, it was about rediscovering myself. The expectations that once imprisoned me now seemed a little lighter. "Do you really believe we can do this?" asked Maria, her eyes shining with new hope. "I believe it," I replied, conviction growing within me. "And if we fail, at least we'll know we tried. That's what life is about, isn't it? Try, take risks, and learn with each step we take." Her smile warmed me. The light that had previously dimmed in his gaze now shone brightly. At that moment, I realized that true wealth was not in material possessions or status, but in the ability to impact lives and create meaningful connections. I wasn't just a businessman. I was a human being, and life was about experiences that led to genuine growth. From that moment on, the expectation of what was to come didn't scare me. I was ready to face any challenges that arose, not only for myself, but also for Maria and all those who could benefit from our work. The journey would be difficult, no doubt, but I knew that with each step, I would be getting closer to a version of myself that I had lost. And so, in that small office, a new determination began to emerge. The weight of certainties and expectations still existed, but now I had something greater to guide me. True success was not a finish line, but rather the journey of discovering who I really was and who I could be alongside people who truly mattered. The internal battle wasn't over, but I was ready to face it. And with this new perspective, the future looked brighter than ever. As Maria and I began to plan our project, the adrenaline of the decision was still pulsing through my veins. But as the days progressed, the reality of our choice began to set in. The idea of working on something that really mattered brought a feeling of freedom, but also a new wave of doubts. The question, what if it doesn't work, repeated itself in my mind like an unsettling mantra. That morning, as I sipped my coffee, the strong, rich aroma failed to dispel the cloud of insecurity that hung over me. The phone rang, and it was my old boss. We talked business, and he made me a tempting proposal for a project that could bring in a significant amount of money. The temptation to return to the world I knew, where success was measured by numbers and status, was strong. But at the same time, I looked out the window and saw Maria sitting on a park bench with a notepad in hand, sketching out the ideas we had discussed. The contrast between the two realities struck me. What did I really want? What was success for me? As I hung up the phone, I realized my answer wasn't that simple. What I was looking for was a purpose, a genuine connection with people and with myself. But the fear of failing grew, and at the same time, a small sign of resilience began to blossom within me. The decision to move forward with the project became not just a choice, but a necessity. That afternoon, I decided to go to the park and join Maria. When I arrived, she was so focused, lost in her thoughts, that she didn't notice my arrival. I sat next to her, and as she wrote, a wave of gratitude washed over me. I was not alone on this journey. Maria was there, fighting by my side. What do you think we should focus on first? I asked, trying to find common ground. She looked at me, her eyes shining with excitement. I was thinking about how we could involve the community. If we can do this, we could give people a voice and help them come together. Her passion was contagious, and I felt that, even in the midst of my doubts, there was something bigger at play. However, in the dead of night, when I returned home, the shadows of my insecurities came back to haunt me. I remembered how many times I had failed in the past. The broken promises, the unmet expectations, and the constant pressure to be the best. I'm not good enough for this, I muttered to myself, feeling the weight of my past failures. I remembered when I left friends and family aside in the name of my career. The incessant search for success took me away from the people who really mattered. And now, he was about to risk it all again. The next few days were an emotional roller coaster. We had meetings with community members, and each interaction brought a mix of hope and fear. I saw Maria shine, while I struggled to find my place. Sometimes I felt like I was just going through the motions, and the insecurity turned into an all-consuming emptiness. "Are you well?" Maria asked once, noticing my distraction during a presentation. "It looks like something is bothering you." "I'm just processing all of this," I replied, trying to hide my confusion. "Sometimes I feel like I'm not good enough to lead this, that you deserve someone better." She was silent for a moment, and I could see the concern in her eyes. "Look, I have questions too," she said finally. "But that doesn't mean we can't do something amazing together." Those words were like a balm for my insecurities. Maria was experiencing the same struggle, and in a way, it brought me some relief. We were partners on this path, and together we could grow. As the days passed, small signs of progress began to appear. The community began to get involved, and the idea of creating a space for dialogue and exchange of experiences began to take shape. During a meeting, one of the residents shared his story of overcoming, and I realized how it resonated with me. That emotional connection was what I had lost over the years. "Look at what we're doing," Maria said, smiling. "We are impacting lives. And that is much more important than any amount of money I could earn." With each new story shared, I felt more empowered. Failure was not the end. It was just a part of learning, as I had told Maria. And although there was still a long road ahead, I was starting to see the beauty in the journey. But the internal struggle was not completely resolved. Memories of my past failures still haunted me, and some nights I would wake up in a panic, wondering if I had made the right decision. The quest for success which once seemed so clear, was now entangled with new responsibilities and expectations. "I don't want to get lost again," I confessed to Maria one night as we looked at the stars. "This search for connection and meaning is important, but what if I end up neglecting everything I've accomplished so far?" She looked at me, and I knew she understood my struggle. "Success is not just in material achievements," she said. "It's in how we make people feel. And if you get lost, we'll be there to remind you of what really matters." These words became a mantra for me. Each day, I tried to apply the lessons I was learning. And even when I felt teetering on the edge of an abyss of uncertainty, I reminded myself that the journey was as valuable as the destination. Life is made of experiences, and I was determined to live them fully. What once seemed like a burden now turned into a path of rediscovery. I was no longer just a businessman looking for success. I was a person searching for meaning, learning to value every step, every mistake, and every victory. And alongside Maria, I realized that life had a lot to offer as long as I was willing to open myself up to it. As I watched Maria draw her ideas in her notebook, a wave of gratitude washed over me. Her presence by my side, with her infectious energy and unwavering focus, was a constant reminder that I was not alone on this journey. At that moment, I realized that the weight of my doubts, although still present, could be shared. "What do you think we should focus on first?" I asked, trying to break the silence that surrounded us. The idea of contributing to something bigger excited me, but insecurity still followed me like a shadow. She raised her eyes, and the light reflecting in them was almost palpable. "I was thinking about how we could involve the community. If we can do this, we could give people a voice and help them come together." As she spoke, I let myself be carried away by the passion she emanated. The idea that we could make a difference in other people's lives began to overcome the negative voices inside me. I remembered how, on other occasions, I had allowed myself to be carried away by fear and doubt. This time, I wanted to act differently. In the days that followed, we began visiting neighborhood residents, listening to their stories and understanding their needs. Each conversation was a small step towards overcoming my insecurities. I remember one afternoon when we met Dona Clara, a lady who had recently lost her husband. As she told us about her struggles, I couldn't help but feel a deep connection. Her pain resonated with me, and for a brief moment, my own struggles seemed insignificant. "You are very strong, Dona Clara," I said, trying to offer some comfort. "Your story can inspire others to find strength too." She smiled, and in that instant, I realized that words had power. Through vulnerability, we began to build relationships that were worth far more than any amount of money I could have made at my old job. But it wasn't easy. At night, when I returned home, the memories of my past failures still haunted me. I remembered times when I had left friends and family aside in search of success. The pressure to be the best had taken me away from everything that really mattered. "I'm not good enough for this," I muttered to myself, feeling the weight of the past. But instead of letting it get me down, I started to reflect on what these failures really meant. Every mistake was a lesson, an opportunity for growth. I started to realize that instead of hiding from them, I could use them as a foundation for something new. One night, as Maria and I sat in the park, I decided to share my fears. "I don't want to get lost again. This search for connection and meaning is important, but what if I end up neglecting everything I've achieved so far?" She looked at me with a knowing look. "Success is not just in material achievements," she said. "It's in how we make people feel. And if you get lost, we'll be there to remind you of what really matters." Those words touched my heart. Success was now defining itself in a different way for me. I didn't want to be just a status figure anymore. I wanted to be someone who impacted the lives of others. And, most importantly, I wanted to be someone who cared about their own life. As we progressed through our project, I started to see the small signs of progress. The community became engaged, and the idea of creating a space for dialogue and exchange of experiences took shape. During a meeting, a resident shared his story of overcoming, and I realized how much it resonated with me. That emotional connection was what I had lost over the years. "Look at what we're doing," Maria said, her smile lighting up the room. "We are impacting lives. And that is much more important than any amount of money I could earn." With each new story shared, I felt more empowered. Failure was not the end. It was just a part of learning. I began to understand that this search for meaning was an ongoing journey, full of ups and downs. And even when I felt teetering on the edge of an abyss of uncertainty, I reminded myself that the journey was as valuable as the destination. As I walked this new path, memories of my failures began to turn into stories of overcoming. I was learning to accept my imperfections and trust myself and the people around me more. The friendship I developed with Maria became a fundamental pillar. She not only encouraged me, but also challenged me to be better. "You're making progress," she told me one night, looking into my eyes. "Every step you take is a victory, even if it seems small." And with that, I realized that every small achievement, every moment of vulnerability, was shaping me into someone stronger and more aware. Life had become a series of lessons and experiences that I was beginning to value, not as a burden, but as an opportunity for growth. The journey was far from over, but now, alongside Maria and with the community for support, I knew I could face any challenge. I had found a new purpose, and it gave me hope. True success was not just in material achievements, but in meaningful connections and the ability to impact lives. And so, I continued, learning to embrace the beauty of each step along the way. The sun was beginning to set, turning the sky a vibrant orange as Maria and I prepared for our first big community meeting. It was the moment we had been waiting for weeks, but anxiety enveloped me like a heavy blanket. The idea of being in front of so many people, many of whom I had only met through informal conversations, made me feel like I was about to walk onto a stage without rehearsal. "Are you nervous?" Maria asked, noticing my uneasiness. "A little," I replied, trying to hide the tremor in my voice. "What if they don't accept our ideas? What if this is all a failure?" She held my hand, and her strength brought me some calm. "Remember what we learned from Dona Clara. Every story we hear matters. We're here to give them a voice, and that's what really counts." Her words echoed in my mind as people began to arrive. The small space we chose was full of familiar faces, but also others whose names I barely knew. I looked around and saw Dona Clara again. She waved at me with an encouraging smile, and it gave me a boost of courage. When the moment to speak finally arrived, I felt the weight of expectation. The words began to flow, but soon the doubts came back to haunt me. What was I doing there? I was about to bare my heart and mind to people who, for a long time, I had believed were superior to me. Insecurity threatened to take over. "We're here to build something together," I began, trying to keep my voice steady. "We want to hear your stories, your difficulties. We believe that, together, we can find solutions." But as he spoke, an inner voice began to scream. I remembered my past, the times I failed to connect, to listen. The fear of failing again paralyzed me. Memories of my selfish choices, of the people I left behind, began to invade my mind. It was as if the past was manifesting itself there, in front of everyone. Then a woman in the audience raised her hand. "What if we can't change anything? What if this is all in vain?" The frustration in his voice was palpable. I felt butterflies in my stomach. That doubt was the same one I carried. I understand what you're feeling," I replied, trying to find courage in my words. But the truth is, I wasn't sure of anything. Uncertainty surrounded me. From across the room, an older man intervened. "I've tried many things before, and it never worked. Why would it be any different now?" His words cut like a knife. I felt pressure in my chest. "It's easy to give up," said Maria, taking the floor without hesitation. "But each of us has a story. Each of us has something to offer. We are not here just to talk, but to listen." The energy in the room changed. People began to murmur among themselves, some nodding in agreement. I looked at Maria and saw that she had touched something deep. What we were doing was more than a project. It was a real opportunity for change. With that, I took a deep breath, and the insecurity began to dissipate. I remembered Dona Clara and her strength, and with a new sense of determination, I decided I wouldn't let fear rule me. I failed many times in my life, I confessed, my heart racing. And for a long time, I thought success was in riches and status. But what I've really learned is that success is about the connections we make, about how we can impact the lives of others. And if we fail, we will start over. A wave of empathy began to rise in the room. People started sharing their experiences, their struggles, and most importantly, their hopes. I saw tears in the eyes of some. The vulnerability that once scared me now became a safe space for all of us. Stories of pain and resilience flowed like a river, and the room was filled with a human warmth that I had never felt before. The memories of my past, of my failures, began to turn into fuel for the new journey we were creating together. At the height of that meeting, as stories intertwined and people encouraged each other, I realized I had found what really mattered. True wealth was not material, but the strength of the relationships we were creating. In the end, looking at those faces full of emotion and hope, I understood that the essence of our project was not just about helping others, but also about helping myself. I was learning to forgive myself and recognize that each failure was a part of my growth. I thanked everyone for sharing their stories and for the courage they showed in opening up. With a smile on my face, I realized that I had finally overcome one of my biggest barriers. The fear didn't completely disappear, but now I knew I wasn't alone. With Maria by my side and the community united, I was ready to face any challenge that came my way. And so, in that small space, a new story began to unfold. A story of overcoming, connection, and hope. The life I was looking for was there, in the relationships we were building, in the voices that were finally being heard. And I was finally ready to hear my own voice. After that meeting, a new energy hovered over me and the community. The stories shared, the struggles and the hopes revealed created a bond that I had never imagined possible. When the last person left the space, I felt that a cycle had closed, but at the same time, a new one had begun. Maria and I sat on a wooden bench in the park near our meeting place. The sky was still tinted orange, but now there was a sense of tranquility in the air. "Did you see how everyone opened up?" said Maria, her eyes shining with enthusiasm. That lady who talked about losing her son, she seemed so relieved to share. "Yes," I replied, still processing everything. It's incredible how pain can be so heavy, but when it's shared, it feels like some of that burden is shared. Never before had I realized the importance of vulnerability. These stories reminded me that behind every face, there's a whole world of experiences that shape who we are. I looked at Maria and realized that, with her by my side, I felt stronger. She had also shown herself to be more confident, more willing to fight for something bigger. As the days passed, the consequences of the meeting began to manifest themselves in unexpected ways. People began to meet regularly, exchanging ideas and experiences. A woman who had spoken out about her struggle with depression became one of the most active voices, organizing support groups. The older man who had previously doubted us offered to lead a workshop on how to deal with financial difficulties. I realized that everyone was recovering in their own way, and so was I. With each new meeting I participated in, I noticed how my confidence grew. I began to understand that my role there was not just that of a facilitator, but of someone who also needed to learn and grow. As a result, the lessons I learned began to resonate in my personal life. I remembered my failures, the times I let myself be carried away by fear and insecurity. However, now that I look back, I realize that each of these experiences prepared me for that moment. I was ready to face the challenges with a new mindset. One afternoon, I found Dona Clara sitting in her garden. His presence was always a foundation of wisdom. We sat together, and I shared with her how the meeting had changed my perspective. I used to think that success was having a brilliant career, a nice car, and money in the bank, I confessed. But now I see that true success is about the connections we make and how we can impact the lives of those around us. She smiled, her eyes shining. "That's right, young man. What takes life to a new level is not possessions, but the way we touch each other's hearts." Those words made me reflect even more. The things I once considered essential seemed so insignificant now. Life was made of moments, shared laughter, tears, and stories. And I was determined to collect these experiences. As time passed, the friendships I made along this journey became deeper. Maria and I, now inseparable, spent hours talking about our visions for the future, about what more we could do for our community. She became my dream partner, and I supported her in every step she took. One night, as we were walking through town, Maria stopped and looked at me. You know, it feels like we're at a new beginning. His eyes reflected the moonlight, and this all started because we decided to give a voice to those who are usually not heard. And why we decided to listen, I added, feeling a wave of gratitude. What else can we do, Maria? She smiled, and at that moment, an idea came to her. What if we created a project to record the stories of our community? We could compile it all into a book. The idea got me excited. It was a way of immortalizing those voices, of giving each story the space it deserves. And at the same time, it would be another step in building new connections and overcoming the barriers that previously separated us. From then on, the days became a sequence of activities, meetings, and recordings. Every story we heard was a new lesson, a new perspective. My heart filled with joy to see so many lives intertwined, each contributing their own pain and joy. And so, when I looked back, I realized that although the flaws and fears were still present, they would not define me. The fresh start that I feared so much was now the basis of my transformation. I had learned to accept my imperfections and those of others, and this gave me a freedom I had never felt before. Life has become a rich, vibrant tapestry, woven from the stories of each of us. And as I continued my journey, I knew that true wealth lay not in material possessions, but in shared experiences and friendships forged in the heat of vulnerability. This was the new life I was living, and I was finally ready to embrace each moment, each challenge, with an open and hopeful heart. As I looked out the window of my apartment, a sense of peace enveloped me. The morning sun illuminated everything with a softness that reflected the new phase of my life. Over the past few months, I have undergone a transformation that I never imagined possible. The journey I began with that meeting not only shaped who I was, but also became the beating heart of my new reality. He had learned the importance of listening and being heard. The stories shared on those date nights became a source of inspiration for me. With each story, with each tear and smile, I absorbed a little more of what it meant to be truly present in the lives of others. Those moments left an indelible mark on my soul, and looking back, I realized how every challenge and every failure I faced became stepping stones to my growth. The vulnerability that once scared me was now a friend. I had learned to accept my imperfections and see the beauty in life's journey, a concept that had previously seemed so distant. Today, I understood that overcoming was not just about winning. It was about learning to dance with adversity, to find meaning in difficulties, and to get up after each fall. The book project we started with Maria has become a symbol of our collective effort. It was not just a collection of stories, but a testament to what it means to be part of a community. I remember the excitement on each person's faces as they saw their experiences printed on pages. There was a shared pride, a sense of belonging that transcended the individual. Each story was a piece of the puzzle that made up our home. I also lived more consciously. Little things started to have a new value. A smile from a stranger, a conversation with a friend, or even the birdsong in the morning, all of these now had a special meaning for me. I knew that life was made of simple moments, and each one was an opportunity to connect, learn, and grow. My friendship with Maria deepened in ways I had never dreamed of. She became a partner not only in projects, but in personal dreams and challenges. Together, we explored new horizons, and each step taken alongside her made me feel like I wasn't alone on this journey. The mutual support we found was reflected in our lives, and I saw Maria blossom into an inspiring leader, someone who now encouraged others to stand up and share their stories. Sometimes we sat on the same wooden bench in the park where it all began, reflecting on how far we'd come. We remembered the pain and struggle, but also the joy that came when people came together, showing that true richness was in the experiences we lived together. It was a feeling that transcended any definition of success I had had before. I have become an advocate for the power of stories. I started sharing what I learned in lectures, meetings, and social media. Every time I spoke about the importance of listening and being heard, I saw other people's faces light up with hope. I felt that, in some way, I was inspiring others to open up and recognize the strength that resides within each of us. Over time, the lessons I learned became part of who I am. I learned to be more patient, to value empathy, and to understand that each person has a unique and meaningful story. The moving experiences I experienced gave me a sense of peace, a harmony that previously seemed unattainable. Now, looking back, I no longer felt pain, but gratitude. Every fall, every mistake, every moment of vulnerability has brought me here, a place of acceptance and love, both for myself and others. Finally, I realized that the true transformation was not just mine. That community that had come together, exchanged stories, and supported each other was now stronger and more united than ever. The impact of our journey spread, and other voices began to emerge, inspired by the courage they found in themselves. What started as a small group of people seeking connection became a movement that brought hope and change. Now, as I look to the future, I understand that life is a constant evolution. Every day is a new opportunity to learn, grow, and connect. The lessons I learned along this journey shaped my way of seeing the world. And as the seasons change and life continues to unfold, I am ready to embrace each new challenge, each new story, with an open and hopeful heart. This is the new life I have chosen to live, and I am more than prepared for what comes next. As I sat on the park bench, remembering each step of this journey, a wave of gratitude washed over me. Looking back and seeing how it all started with a simple meeting, an impulse of vulnerability and a willingness to share stories, made me feel that every choice, every mistake, and every success were fundamental to my transformation. The gentle morning breeze seemed to whisper secrets of hope, and I was more than ready to hear them. I remember a conversation I had with Maria a few weeks ago. We were laughing at our past insecurities, at the fears that paralyzed us. "Do you remember how we couldn't speak in public?" she said, winking at me. It was like the words just disappeared. I laughed, but the truth was that struggle made me realize how much I had changed now wasn't just about public speaking. It was about feeling comfortable in my own skin, accepting who I am, with all my flaws and virtues. The transformation I experienced was not easy, and I do not intend to romanticize it. There were days when doubt crept in, when I wondered if I had really learned something. But in those moments, I remembered every story I had heard, every tear I had shared. Each one was a reminder that I am not alone. The vulnerability that once frightened me was now my shield and my sword. I have learned to use my story as a light that not only guides me, but also lights the path for others. As I reflected on what success meant to me, I realized that I had moved away from the idea of material wealth. True success was in the connections I made, the lives I touched, and the stories I helped tell. The pride I felt when I saw my name printed next to Maria in our book was a reflection of what we had built together. We weren't just authors, we were defenders of a movement. A movement that encouraged people to express themselves, connect, and become stronger through their experiences. Once, during a talk, I heard a woman in the audience say, "I never thought my story could matter." His words resonated with me. I had been in that place before, believing my voice would have no impact. But in that crowded room, I realized that each story has immense power. They can heal, inspire, and most of all, unite. And by sharing mine, I had given others permission to do the same. It is this exchange that feeds the soul and reminds us of our shared humanity. As I was lost in thought, a child ran past, laughing and playing, and I smiled. Life unfolded before us in a constant dance of ups and downs, and I was learning to embrace every part of the spectacle. What was once a struggle was now a celebration of small victories. I learned that failures do not define who we are, they are simply stepping stones to the next level. And every time I fell, I got up with more strength and resilience. My gaze returned to the horizon, where the sun was beginning to hide, dyeing the sky with shades of orange and pink. It was a reminder that every end also brings a new beginning. And so, I committed to continuing this journey of self-discovery and growth. Not just for me, but for all the voices that have not yet been heard, for all the stories that are yet to come. If I could leave you with one final message, it would be this: don't underestimate the power of your story. Each of us has something valuable to share. Therefore, I invite you, who are reading this now, to reflect on your own journey. What stories do you carry? What lessons have you learned? Don't be afraid to open up and share. What you have to say could be the light someone needs to find their own path. And while you're at it, remember that your interactions matter. Like, share and subscribe so that we can continue this exchange of experiences and learning together. Each gesture of support brings more content and connects us even more as a community. Now is your moment. Open up, share, and inspire. Your story matters, just like the rest of us.